The dust from the stagecoach hadn't yet settled when Eleanor Whitmore stumbled onto the wooden planks of Redemption Creek's only street. Her traveling dress, once a respectable shade of navy, was stained with the red earth of 3 territories. The bruise on her cheekbone had faded to a sickly yellow, a parting gift from her stepfather before he'd sold her contract to a saloon owner in this godforsaken town. She clutched the small velvet pouch containing her mother's wedding ring, the only thing of value she'd managed to hide. Her stomach hadn't known food in 2 days, and the September sun bore down mercilessly on her bare head. The saloon loomed before her like a prison, its painted sign creaking in the hot wind. The Lucky Strike. Through the dusty windows, she could see the man who'd bought her, a corpulent figure in a stained waistcoat, counting coins at the bar. If you're enjoying this story, I'd be incredibly grateful if you could take just a moment to subscribe to the From Wild West channel and leave a like on this video. It truly means everything to us and motivates our team to continue bringing you quality romantic tales from the frontier. Thank you so much for your support. Eleanor's fingers trembled as she opened the pouch, staring at the thin gold band. Perhaps she could trade it for passage somewhere else. Anywhere else. The general store across the street seemed her only hope, if they'd even deal with a woman alone. She crossed the dusty street, her boots scuffing against hard-packed earth. The store was dim and cool inside, smelling of tobacco and leather. An older woman behind the counter looked her up and down with suspicious eyes. "I need food," Eleanor said, her voice barely above a whisper. "And perhaps passage on the next stage heading east. I have this." She placed the ring on the scarred wooden counter. The woman picked it up, examined it briefly, then set it down with a dismissive snort. "Gold's worth something, I suppose, but it won't get you far. Where's your husband?" "I have no husband." "Then you best be getting to work at the Lucky Strike like you're meant to." The woman's expression held no sympathy. "That's where girls like you end up in these parts." Eleanor's hand closed over the ring, her vision blurring with tears she refused to shed. She turned blindly toward the door and collided with something solid, a wall of muscle and leather. Strong hands steadied her shoulders. "Easy there, miss." She looked up into a face carved by sun and hardship, perhaps 30 years of life etched into tanned skin. His eyes were an unexpected gray blue, like storm clouds over the prairie. And they studied her with an intensity that made her want to flee. "Excuse me," she whispered, trying to step around him. His gaze moved to her bruised cheek, then to the ring clutched in her palm. "You selling that?" Yes. I need to leave town." The cowboy, for that's what he clearly was, with his worn denim and dusty boots, glanced at the storekeeper. "Mrs. Henderson, I'll take a month's worth of supplies. Put it on my account." "Of course, Mr. Callahan." He turned back to Eleanor. "Come with me. Wasn't asking what you thought about it." His voice was rough but not unkind. He guided her out of the store with a hand at her elbow, his touch firm yet respectful. In the sunlight, she could see him more clearly, tall, broad-shouldered with dark hair that touched his collar and a shadow of stubble on his jaw. A scar cut through his left eyebrow, giving him a dangerous look that made her heart race. "Where are you taking me?" "To get you a meal. Then we'll talk." "I don't have money for—" "Did I ask for money?" He led her to the small restaurant next to the general store, a place with checkered curtains and the smell of fresh bread wafting through the door. Inside, he pulled out a chair at a corner table. "Sit." Eleanor sank into the chair, exhaustion finally overwhelming caution. When was the last time someone had shown her even this small kindness? The proprietor, a round-faced man with kind eyes, approached. "James, haven't seen you in town for weeks. Who's your friend?" "Lady needs a meal, Tom. Bring her whatever you've got hot." "Coming right up." When they were alone, the cowboy, James Callahan, leaned back in his chair, studying her with those unsettling gray eyes. "What's your name?" "Eleanor. Eleanor Whitmore." "Where are you from, Eleanor Whitmore?" "Boston, originally." She swallowed hard. "My mother died last year. My stepfather, he sold my contract to the man who owns the saloon. I'm supposed to start work tonight." Something dangerous flickered in James's eyes. "Sold your contract?" "Yes." Her voice broke. "I was sold to please him and his customers, and I can't." "Stop." His voice was gentle, but firm. He leaned forward, his forearms resting on the table. "You're not going to that saloon. You understand me?" "I don't have a choice. The law." "The law in Redemption Creek is whatever I say it is." He said it without arrogance, just simple fact. "I own the largest ranch in 3 territories. Half the men in this town work for me or do business with me, including Sheriff Morrison." Eleanor stared at him, afraid to hope. "Why would you help me?" Tom arrived with a plate of roast beef, potatoes, and greens, along with a basket of bread and a glass of cool water. The sight of it made Eleanor's eyes sting with tears. "Eat," James said simply. She tried to maintain some dignity, but hunger won. She ate slowly at first, then faster, the food seeming to bring her back to life. James watched her without judgment, occasionally sipping from a cup of coffee Tom had brought him. When she'd finished, she felt almost human again. "Thank you. I'll repay you somehow." "Keep your ring," he interrupted. "Gold isn't what's needed here." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "What's needed is someone who can cook a decent meal, keep a house, and isn't afraid of hard work. My ranch hands are tired of my burnt coffee and undercooked beans." Eleanor's heart began to pound. "You're offering me employment? Room, board, and wages. Nothing more, unless you want it to be." His eyes held hers. "You'll have your own room in the main house, door locks from the inside. I've got 6 ranch hands who live in the bunkhouse, but they know better than to cause trouble. You'll be safe on my land." "Why?" She needed to understand. "Why would you do this for a stranger?" James was quiet for a moment, his jaw tightening. "Because 3 years ago, someone helped my sister when she needed it. And because no woman should be treated like property." He stood, dropping coins on the table. "My wagon's at the livery. Be there in 10 minutes if you want to leave this town. If not, I won't stop you from making your own choice." He walked out, leaving her sitting there with her mother's ring still clutched in her hand, and a decision that would change everything. Eleanor found herself walking toward the livery before she'd even fully decided. What choice did she really have? The saloon or the unknown? And something in James Callahan's storm cloud eyes told her he was a man who kept his word. The wagon was loaded with supplies, 2 horses hitched and ready. James was checking the harness when she approached. "I'll come," she said quietly. "Thank you." He nodded once, then helped her onto the wagon seat with surprising gentleness for such large hands. His fingers were calloused, but warm against hers. The ride to the ranch took nearly 3 hours, across open prairie, dotted with cattle and mesquite. James didn't speak much, but the silence wasn't uncomfortable. He pointed out landmarks, a creek where the water ran clear, a stand of cottonwoods where eagles nested, the distant mountains that mark the western boundary of his land. "How long have you owned the ranch?" Eleanor asked. "Built it from nothing over 10 years. Started with 50 head of cattle and a piece of land nobody wanted. Now I've got 3,000 head and more acres than I can ride in a day." He glanced at her. "It's isolated. Nearest neighbor is 5 miles south. Town is 8 miles. You'll be alone a lot while the men are working." "I'm used to being alone." Something in her voice made him look at her more closely, but he didn't pry. The ranch appeared as they crested a low rise, a sprawling operation with a 2-story house, a large barn, multiple corrals, and several outbuildings. It was more impressive than Eleanor had expected, speaking to years of hard work and careful planning. "It's beautiful," she breathed. "It's home." James pulled the wagon up to the house. "Come on, I'll show you inside." The house was clean but Spartan, clearly the domain of a man who spent more time outdoors than in. The main room had a large stone fireplace, worn leather furniture, and windows that looked out over the prairie. The kitchen was spacious, with a cast-iron stove and a hand pump for water. "Your room's upstairs," James said, carrying her small carpet bag. "Second door on the left. My room's at the end of the hall. Like I said, your door locks." The room was simple but comfortable. A bed with a quilt, a dresser, a washstand with a pitcher and basin. A window looked out over the corrals and the prairie beyond. It was more than Eleanor had dared to hope for. "The hands eat at sunrise and sundown," James said from the doorway. "Breakfast is usually biscuits, eggs, and coffee. Dinner is whatever meat we've got, and beans or potatoes. Nothing fancy. You think you can handle that?" "Yes." Eleanor turned to face him. "Mr. Callahan?" "James. James, I want you to know, I'm grateful. More than I can say. I'll work hard, I promise." His expression softened slightly. "I believe you. Get some rest. We'll start fresh tomorrow." He left, his boots heavy on the stairs. Eleanor heard the front door close, then the sound of his voice as he called to someone outside. She sank onto the bed, her mother's ring still in her pocket, and for the first time in months, she felt something like hope. That evening, Eleanor met the ranch hands when they came in for supper. James had clearly warned them, because they were respectful to the point of stiffness. 6 weathered men, ranging in age from young cowboys to a grizzled older man named Dutch, who served as foreman. "Ma'am," they mumbled, removing their hats as they filed into the kitchen. Eleanor had found enough supplies to make a simple stew and cornbread, using skills her mother had taught her years ago. The men ate in grateful silence, and she noticed James watching her from his place at the head of the table. After the hands returned to the bunkhouse, James helped her clear the dishes, an unexpected gesture that made her oddly nervous. "You didn't have to help," she said. "Habit. Been doing my own dishes for years." He dried a plate with a worn towel. "You did well today. They'll be fighting over seconds by next week." It was nothing special. It was hot and edible. "That's special enough around here." He set down the plate. "Eleanor, about your situation. The contract your stepfather sold. Legally, it's worth the paper it's written on, which is nothing without your consent. But men like the saloon owner don't care about legal niceties. He might cause trouble." Fear flickered through her. "What kind of trouble?" "The kind I'll handle if it comes." His voice was hard. "You're under my protection now. That means something in these parts." "I don't want to cause you problems." "You're not causing anything. Men who buy and sell women are the problem." He hung up the towel. "Get some rest. Tomorrow I'll teach you to handle a rifle. Every woman on a ranch needs to know how to protect herself." The next morning, came too early. Dawn breaking pink and gold over the prairie. Eleanor had barely slept, unused to the sounds of the ranch, cattle lowing in the distance, horses moving in the corrals, the wind constant against the house. She made breakfast as promised, and the hands ate with better humor than the night before, Dutch even venturing a compliment on her biscuits. James ate quickly, then waited while she cleaned up. "Ready for your first lesson?" he asked. "Lesson?" "Told you, every woman here needs to know how to shoot." He led her out behind the barn, where he'd set up bottles on fence posts. The rifle he handed her was heavy, the metal cold against her palms. "It's going to kick," James said, moving behind her. "Press it firm against your shoulder, or you'll bruise." His hands adjusted her stance, his body close enough that she could feel his warmth. "Look down the sight. See that bottle? Breathe in, breathe out halfway, then squeeze. Don't pull the trigger." His voice was low, patient. Eleanor tried to focus on the target, and not on how his hands felt on her shoulders, steadying her. She squeezed the trigger. The rifle kicked hard, and she stumbled back into his chest. The bottle remained mockingly intact. "Again," James said, unperturbed. "You flinched. Don't anticipate the shot." They practiced for an hour, until her shoulder ached and her ears rang. She managed to hit 3 bottles, each success making James's rare smile appear. "You're a natural," he said, taking the rifle. "Few more weeks you'll be able to hit a coyote at 100 yards. "Why would I need to do that?" "Coyotes go after calves. Rattlesnakes hide in the grass. And sometimes men with bad intentions ride onto land where they're not welcome." His expression darkened. "Out here, you can't always wait for help to arrive." Over the following days, Eleanor fell into a rhythm. She woke before dawn to start breakfast, spent mornings cleaning and preparing for the midday meal, and afternoons learning the skills James insisted she master: riding, shooting, recognizing tracks and signs of danger. He was a patient teacher, but demanding, never accepting less than her best effort. When she fell from her horse the first time, he simply helped her up and told her to get back on. When she missed the target repeatedly, he adjusted her stance and made her try again. "You're not fragile," he said once, after she'd apologized for being slow. "Stop acting like you are. In Boston, ladies weren't supposed to. You're not in Boston anymore." His voice was firm, but not unkind. "Out here, delicate doesn't survive. Strong does. And you're stronger than you think." Something in his words made her stand taller. The hands warmed to her as well. Dutch teaching her how to recognize when a storm was coming by the smell of the air. Young Billy showing her where the best wild berries grew. They treated her with respect, never crossing the invisible line James had drawn. But it was James himself who occupied her thoughts more than she wanted to admit. She noticed small things: how gentle he was with the horses, how he never raised his voice to the men, but commanded their loyalty effortlessly, how sometimes she'd catch him staring out at the prairie with an expression of profound loneliness. One evening, 3 weeks after her arrival, she found him on the porch after supper, staring at the sunset. She'd brought him coffee without quite knowing why. "Thanks," he said, taking the cup. After a moment, he gestured to the chair beside him. "Sit if you want." Eleanor sat, her own cup warming her hands against the cooling evening air. The sky was ablaze with orange and purple, the prairie endless before them. "Do you ever get lonely out here?" she asked. "Every day." His honesty surprised her. Built all this, but there's no one to share it with. What about your sister? You mentioned her. Sarah. She married a shopkeeper in Denver. Happy, from her letters. I see her maybe once a year. He took a sip of coffee. What about you? Any family besides the stepfather? No one. My real father died when I was 10. Mother remarried 3 years later. He seemed kind enough at first, but after she died, Eleanor's throat tightened. He had debts. I was a convenient solution. Son of a bitch, James muttered. Then, sorry, shouldn't curse in front of... It's all right. He was a son of a bitch. The words felt rebellious on her tongue, liberating. James actually laughed, a low rumble that made something flutter in her chest. You're full of surprises, Eleanor Whitmore. I'm discovering that myself. They sat in comfortable silence as stars began to emerge. Eleanor found herself intensely aware of him. The breadth of his shoulders, the strong line of his jaw, the way his hands cradled the coffee cup with surprising delicacy. Can I ask you something? She said quietly. Go ahead. Why haven't you married? Built all this, but you're alone. James was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. When he spoke, his voice was rougher. I was engaged once, 6 years ago. Mary Sullivan, sheriff's daughter. Week before the wedding, she got sick. Fever that wouldn't break. She died 3 days later. He stared into his coffee. Told myself I wouldn't go through that again. Loving someone, losing them. I'm sorry, Eleanor whispered. Long time ago now. But she could hear the old pain in his voice. What about you? Ever been in love? No, never had the chance. Mother kept me close, and after she died, my stepfather. He made sure I had no prospects, no suitors. Just the auction block. In the end. That's finished now. James's voice was hard. You're free here. Am I? Eleanor met his eyes. Or am I just in a different kind of cage? Is that how it feels? No, she admitted. But I'm dependent on your charity, your protection. What happens if what? If you change your mind about me being here, if I displease you somehow. James set down his coffee and turned to face her fully. In the dying light, his eyes were intense. Listen to me. You're not property. You're a person. You work hard. You've earned your place here. Nobody's going to take that from you. Not me, not anyone. He paused. And if you ever want to leave, I'll give you enough money to start fresh somewhere else. No strings. You're not trapped here, Eleanor. Tears stung her eyes at the fierce sincerity in his voice. Why do you care so much? Because I see someone worth saving. He said it simply, like it was obvious. And maybe because you remind me that there's more to life than just surviving. Before she could respond, Dutch's voice called from the bunkhouse. Boss, got a rider coming in fast. James was on his feet instantly, his hand going to the revolver at his hip. Get inside, he told Eleanor. Lock the door. What's wrong? Might be nothing. Might be trouble. Either way, you're not facing it. Eleanor watched from the window as a rider galloped into the yard, his horse lathered with sweat. In the lamplight, she recognized Sheriff Morrison, his weathered face grim. The men talked in low voices, but she could see James's body language change, shoulders tensing, jaw tightening. When Morrison rode away, James stood in the yard for a long moment before coming back to the house. Eleanor met him at the door. What is it? The saloon owner, Garrett. He's making noise about his property being stolen. Says he's owed compensation, or you back at the Lucky Strike. James's voice was carefully controlled. Morrison told him where to stick his complaint, but Garrett's hired some men, gun hands from Texas. Fear coiled in Eleanor's stomach. This is my fault. I should leave. Go somewhere he can't. You're not going anywhere. James's voice was steel. This is my land, my rules. Garrett wants a fight, he'll get one, but not the one he's expecting. I don't want you getting hurt because of me. His expression softened slightly. Too late for that, Eleanor. Whether you know it or not, you've already carved out a place here. With the men, with me. We protect our own. The next morning, James rode into town with Dutch and 3 other hands, all armed. Eleanor spent the day in an agony of worry, unable to focus on her work. The remaining hands tried to distract her with stories and jokes, but she kept looking toward the road. It was late afternoon when the wagon returned. Eleanor ran out, her heart in her throat, and nearly sobbed with relief when she saw James dismount unharmed. "It's handled," he said, catching her hands before she could touch him. "Garrett won't bother you again." "What did you do?" "Had a conversation. Explained that he'd forged your contract, that you never consented, and that I had a dozen witnesses who'd testify to that in court. Also mentioned that if anything happened to you or anyone on my ranch, he'd find himself facing more trouble than his hired guns could handle." James's smile was cold. He saw reason. "Just like that? Well, I may have also bought the building his saloon's in, from the actual owner, who was happy to sell when I offered double its worth. Garrett's lease expires end of the month." His expression was satisfied. "He'll be gone by then, and good riddance." Eleanor stared at him. "You bought a building for me?" "I bought it to get rid of a man who treats women like livestock. Don't make it more than it is." But there was something in his eyes that suggested it was more, much more. That night, Eleanor couldn't sleep. She kept replaying the moment James had caught her hands, the relief in his face, the way he'd risked confrontation with dangerous men to protect her. She was falling for him, had been falling for weeks now, and the realization terrified her. She wrapped a shawl around her shoulders and went downstairs for water. The house was dark, except for lamplight coming from James's study. She found him at his desk, working on account books, his shirt sleeves rolled up and his hair disheveled. "Can't sleep?" he asked without looking up. "Too much on my mind." He set down his pen. "Me too. James." She moved into the room, her bare feet silent on the floorboards. "Thank you. For everything. For today especially. Told you, we protect our own. Is that all I am?" The words escaped before she could stop them. "Just someone you're protecting?" James stood slowly, his eyes locked on hers. "You know you're not. Then what am I?" "Eleanor." He moved around the desk, stopping close enough that she could see the pulse beating in his throat. "Don't ask questions you're not ready for the answers to." "Maybe I am ready." Her voice trembled, but she held her ground. "Maybe I'm tired of being afraid. Of everyone, of everything. Of this." She gestured between them. "This? Whatever's happening between us. Whatever this feeling is that makes my heart race when you're near. That makes me worry when you're gone. That makes me wish." She trailed off, courage failing. "Wish what?" His voice was rough. "That you'd stop being so respectful. Stop treating me like I might break." She met his eyes, her own blazing. "You told me I wasn't fragile, so stop acting like I am." For a long moment, James didn't move. Then his hand came up, cupping her cheek with surprising gentleness. His thumb brushed over her skin, and she trembled. "You don't know what you're asking," he said quietly. "Then tell me." "I'm asking for everything, Eleanor. Not just this moment, but all of them. Every sunrise, every storm, every hard day and good one. I'm asking for a partner, not just someone to warm my bed. And I'm asking knowing I've got nothing pretty to offer. Just this ranch, this life, and a heart that already belongs to you, whether you want it or not." Eleanor's breath caught. "James, I love you," he said simply. "Probably have since you walked into Tom's restaurant, looking fierce and terrified all at once. And I know it's too soon. I know you've been through hell, but I can't keep pretending." She kissed him. It wasn't gentle or tentative. It was fierce and desperate. Months of loneliness and fear and longing pouring into that single contact. James made a sound low in his throat and pulled her closer, one hand tangling in her hair, while the other pressed against her lower back. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, James rested his forehead against hers. "That was long overdue," Eleanor finished. He laughed breathlessly. "Yeah, it was." Then his expression grew serious. "Eleanor, I meant what I said. Everything. But I need you to be sure. If this is gratitude, or it's not." She cut him off firmly. "I love you too, James Callahan. Not because you saved me, but because of who you are. Because you're strong, but gentle. Because you believe I'm more than what was done to me. Because when I'm with you, I'm not afraid anymore." His arms tightened around her. "Then marry me. Not because you need protection or a home, but because you want to. Because you love this place and this life, and this stubborn rancher who can't cook worth a damn." "Yes." She laughed through sudden tears. "Yes, of course, yes." James kissed her again, slower this time, savoring it. When he pulled back, his eyes were bright. "We'll do it right. Get Sarah here from Denver. Invite the whole town. Make it a celebration." "I don't need all that," Eleanor protested. "Maybe not, but I want everyone to know you chose me, that you're my wife, not my employee or my charity case, but my equal partner in all of this." He gestured to encompass the house, the ranch, their future. "Together," Eleanor whispered. "Together," he agreed. They were married 4 weeks later, in late October, when the prairie grass had turned golden and the air had the bite of coming winter. Sarah came from Denver with her husband, a kind man who pumped James's hand and told Eleanor she was getting a good one. The ranch hands dressed in their Sunday best, Dutch serving as witness. Sheriff Morrison performed the ceremony in the yard, with the prairie stretching endlessly beyond them. Eleanor wore a simple dress of pale blue, her mother's ring on a chain around her neck. She'd keep it always. But her left hand now bore a band of silver James had commissioned from the town silversmith, engraved with sage leaves and a tiny longhorn. When Morrison pronounced them married, James kissed her thoroughly enough to make Dutch whistle and the other hands cheer. Eleanor didn't care. She kissed him back, her hands fisted in his jacket, and felt truly free for the first time in her life. The celebration lasted into the evening, with Tom bringing food from town and someone producing a fiddle. James danced with her under the stars, spinning her around the yard while everyone clapped and sang. "Happy?" he murmured in her ear. "Happier than I ever imagined possible." She looked up at him, this man who'd given her not just safety, but a life worth living. "I love you. Love you too, Mrs. Callahan." He said her new name like a prayer. "Always will." Later, after the guests had departed and the house was quiet, they stood on the porch watching the stars. Eleanor leaned against James's chest, his arms around her, and felt the rightness of it settle into her bones. Do you remember what you said that first day? She asked. In the restaurant? I said a lot of things. You said gold wasn't what was needed, that I was what was needed. She turned in his arms to face him. I didn't understand then, but I do now. You weren't just talking about someone to cook and clean. No. His voice was soft. I was talking about someone to build a life with. Someone to make this place a home instead of just a ranch. Someone to love and be loved by. He brushed a strand of hair from her face. I was talking about you, even if I didn't know it yet. I was sold to please you, she whispered, echoing those dark words from months ago. That's what my stepfather told me, that my worth was in pleasing men. James's jaw tightened, but she pressed her fingers to his lips. But then you sensed something different. She smiled, her eyes bright with tears. You said, then let me please you first. And you did, James. You pleased me by treating me like a person, by teaching me to be strong, by loving me for who I am, not what I could give you. Eleanor, I'm not finished. She cupped his face in her hands. You gave me back myself. My courage, my strength, my future. And I choose to spend it with you. Not because I have to, but because I want to. Because loving you is the easiest, truest thing I've ever done. James pulled her close, his face buried in her hair. I'll spend every day earning that love, he promised. Every single day. You already have. They went inside together, closing the door on the night and the past, and stepped into their future, whatever it might bring, hand in hand. 5 years later, Eleanor Callahan stood on the porch of the ranch house, watching her daughter chase chickens across the yard. Emma was 3 years old, with her father's gray eyes and her mother's stubborn determination. Careful, Eleanor called. Don't scare them or they won't lay. James emerged from the barn, their son, barely a year old, perched on his shoulders. Thomas grabbed his father's hair and giggled as James pretended to stumble. Your mother's gonna have my hide if I drop you, James told the boy, grinning at Eleanor. She smiled back, her heart full to bursting. The ranch had prospered. They'd added another 100 head of cattle last year, and the Hands bunkhouse had been expanded. Dutch was now co-foreman, working alongside a young cowboy Eleanor had insisted they hire when she'd found him half-starved on the road to town. Supper's ready, she announced. Emma came running, her dark braids flying. Is it stew? Your favorite. I love your stew, Mama. James set Thomas down and caught Eleanor's hand as they walked into the house. You know what today is? Tuesday? 5 years since I found you in Tom's restaurant, looking like you were ready to either fight the world or collapse trying. Eleanor leaned into him. Best day of my life. Mine too. He kissed her temple. Though I'd say our wedding day comes close. And the day Emma was born, Eleanor added. And when Thomas arrived, James agreed. All right, so I've had a lot of best days since you showed up. Eleanor laughed, the sound free and joyful. She'd never imagined this life, this happiness, was possible. But here she was, surrounded by love and laughter, strong and capable and free. I was sold to please you, she'd said once, in desperation and fear. Then let me please you first, he'd replied, and changed everything. And every day since, he had. Together. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're enjoying this tale from. Are you listening at home, during your commute, or perhaps while working? Please subscribe to the From Wild West channel and share your thoughts in the comments below. What did you think of Eleanor and James's journey? Your feedback means the world to us.